Hi there, and Happy New Year! Welcome back to Quick Tips for Online Teaching. I'm your host, Jenna Camp, and today we're talking about brainwriting. Now, you've probably been a part of or even facilitated a brainstorming session in your lifetime. And if that's the case, you know how quickly a brainstorming session can devolve into a lot of kids screaming things at once or just a yelling match. It's chaos. One or two voices can dominate the conversation. The rest of the scholars just kind of hang off in the background and hitchhike and don't do a heck of a lot. Maybe scholars are starting to evaluate those ideas as they come in instead of just letting everything come out. There can be a lot of tricky pitfalls to a brainstorming session. And because of that, brainwriting was developed as an alternative. Now, there are a lot of benefits to this idea of brainwriting. The goal is still the same, to generate a lot of ideas before those ideas get judged and evaluated and thrown out or further developed. Brainwriting allows, I would argue, allows for greater critical and creative thought to emerge because ideas are generated individually, which means that every scholar in the room is generating ideas, and you as the teacher facilitator can see that happening because of the way it's set up. Again, ideas can be generated anonymously if necessary. This is an important point. If you have a classroom full of introverts, English learners whose expressive language may not be as strong, or they don't feel that their expressive language is as strong, or students with IEPs who have processing issues and need a little more time to think, so they need a little quiet in the beginning, and they any scholar, doesn't matter who they are, any scholar can just be shy about their brand new ideas. So the anonymous tip can be really helpful. Also, ideas are generated simultaneously and silently. The discussion, which happens, comes at the end. So through the brainwriting process, it is silent, which is the exact opposite of the brainstorming session where everybody's talking all the time and it can just get crazy, and you can love that energy. And sometimes that's wonderful, but sometimes it just doesn't lend itself to greater critical thinking. In fact, the benefits of brainwriting have been studied, and it does show to minimize the effect of status differentials, dysfunctional interpersonal conflicts in a classroom. What? Never, not in mine. Domination by one or two group members, pressure to conform to the group norms, or pressure to conform to the prevailing ideas that are out there, and digressions from the focal topic. All of these are problems of brainstorming, which can be mitigated through an expert facilitator and a really expert group at brainstorming. But brainwriting, again, is a really useful technique in the classroom that can get immediately to a lot of ideas generated. Let's see how we set this up for success so that we can get to all of those ideas generated. Again, this is something that you'll want to use potentially at the start of a unit. Maybe it's part of a KWL chart, so generating what scholars know or want to know already, want to learn about a topic. It can be about a writing prompt. I'll show you how I did one shared writing prompt. It can be for any kind of problem-based or project-based educational tasks where there are a number of potential solves or resolutions or outcomes or answers or responses to an educational task. Whatever that is, identify the prompt or problem to be addressed and be sure everyone understands it and the process you're going to be using. For this process, everyone gets their own paper or template to write on, or maybe their own sticky note or colored pen. Now, I'll talk to you about how this can happen virtually. I'll show you for online teaching. But in a classroom, picture this, there's a couple different ways, and hopefully you can see the top left picture here is an image of large pieces of paper with lots of stickies and people. Granted, these are adults in the picture, but there are people working here on the same paper. Okay, so that's one way where that paper gets passed around from person to person. Another way of doing it in person is kind of like a gallery walk where you have butcher paper up on the walls in different sections of the room, and everybody has a sticky note or a specific colored pen or pencil, and they go and the scholars move from idea to idea, from butcher paper to butcher paper. So it's kind of like a gallery walk, only this time they're generating ideas instead of looking at something. Or you can also do it digitally. You can do it digitally in the classroom together, or you can do through distance learning or through online learning entirely. So I'll show you how to set that up. The process is this. Round one is the longest round. Scholars get 5 minutes to generate as many ideas as possible. Keep in mind, for some scholars, that might be one idea. For some scholars, that might be 3 or 4 ideas. And it might depend on the prompt that you're doing. If it's anonymous, if we set this up anonymously, and you can do that fairly easily through a gallery walk, for example, it doesn't matter how many ideas are generated, right, in this time by one particular scholar. If someone doesn't have an idea in 5 minutes, that's okay, because guess what? There's round 2 and 3 and 4, and that person's brain is going to get going because that's the way brains work. It's another benefit to this. So after your 5-minute initial idea generation, round 2, you now pass that paper clockwise, okay? Or people move clockwise to another section of the room, to another butcher paper. Now you have 3 minutes, and scholars are generating ideas in response to and building on what's already written. So instead of answering the initial prompt, they're now responding to what another scholar has suggested. Okay. And this is where I like to really focus on that improv rule of no no's and no buts. No no's, no buts, just yes and. Okay, so have them think, yes, and we could also do this. So they can generate a brand new idea in response to someone's already written idea. Or they can build on that. They can disagree with it, but instead of saying, nah, it's not good, they're going to say, yes, and maybe we could do this. So rounds 3, 4, and 5, it really depends on how many scholars in the room you have, or how many scholars per collaborative group you have. It depends on how you're setting this up, how many rounds you want. Okay, but it continues in the same vein. Round 1 is 5 minutes, and all the consecutive rounds past that are 3 minutes long. When you're done, when everyone's had a chance to look at everything, you gather all those ideas, you post them or publicize them, and then you begin the discussion. Then you can sort through the different ideas. You can label groups that seem to go together. You can connect ideas across areas, and you can evaluate what it is that your group wants to do in terms of responding to the problem or task. Let me show you some visuals to make this a little more clear. And I'm actually going to start in this top right corner. Let me move my face out of the way. So this is that top idea where there's a paper. I actually have a template that I like to use that looks something similar to this. One scholar gets one piece of paper. I still like to use sticky notes or different colored markers or pens because color is fun and it's more exciting for all of us. So this is where you have on that one paper the initial person, and here we've got person one, you can see there's 4 people listed here for different stickies. There's actually 6 altogether. There's 2 more stickies you can't see down there. So the paper originator, the first person with the blank paper, puts down his or her idea in a section of the prompt, or actually, one of the things I like to use, I've got this right handy right here. It's kind of similar on a piece of paper, right? So I can just have the prompt written up here, and then this would all be blank paper. And then the first scholar would write down his or her idea that corresponds to this idea right here. Then in subsequent rounds, you pass this paper around, and on the screen here, we're adding in different color sticky notes or different ideas. On the paper, it can just be writing down in round 2. This person is writing down something, and responding to the 3rd bullet point. But you could also do sticky notes. That person 2, person 3 can put a sticky note, person 4 can put a sticky note, right? So these things can look just like they do up here on the screen. Digitally, I'm going to move my face again down here. Digitally, this is created with just your good old Google Doc. You know how I love Google Docs. So we have a group of 5 students here, all beginning with the letter B: Betty, Bobby, Brian, Brenda, Blaine. They each get a color originally assigned to them, okay? And in the first round, they respond to the problem to be solved, or the question to be answered, or the task to be completed, right there in their round 1 row. So Betty is B3, Bobby is green at C3, Brian is D3. Okay, so we can see they just go across and they each use that round 1 cell to write their ideas, to generate their ideas. If you wanted to make this anonymous, you simply just don't put the name there and make sure that everyone knows what color they have. Okay, so that's a really easy way to make this anonymous. In round 2, Yellow Betty goes from B3 to C4. So she's now going to read what Bobby has written and respond to that, to Bobby's idea. Yes, and. In round 3, she's now moving down to D5, and she now has in her column Bobby's response to Brian's idea. So she's now going to respond to Bobby and Brian with a yes and kind of a comment. And again, it just continues in that vein, right? So Blaine begins here, and then he moves over to, the orange moves over to the first, to the B column. So you can see that process, and it's visual, it's full of color, and it's easy for scholars to follow. Let me once again move my face out of the way. This is where we start to do the discussion. So you gather all of these papers or templates or Google documents. And so you can see like this here is one of these papers, right? Or lots of different sticky notes and people adding to the one idea on there. And you can start to, in the collaborative group or in the whole group section, the whole class, you can start this to facilitate this discussion. So scholars are now identifying what ideas go together, and you can start to cluster and sort ideas. Once you sort them and cluster them, you can label those ideas. That's another really good idea, of labeling these ideas. And then once you've done that, you can start to think, okay, you can start to now evaluate and discuss these ideas and decide what's really feasible, what's going to work, what can we do, what's pie in the sky, and really have a deeply thoughtful, critical discussion of all of these ideas. And again, there's the sense of anonymity. Everybody's had a chance to contribute, and we're really just focused on the ideas now, not on who generated them, but on the quality of the idea itself. This final page here is a screenshot of a Jamboard that I did for when we had an essay prompt for a book that we were reading. And this was a much loosier, goosier kind of brainwriting session I just wanted to show you. In this case, we had 4 or 5 different essay choices that scholars could choose from. So I think there were 4. I assigned everybody in class a number, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And we opened up the Jamboard. And again, this is all online and digital. So they open up the Jamboard and they go to the Jamboard that corresponds to their first number, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay. So everyone with essay choice 1 is now reading the essay prompt and responding to it. They can put stickies, they can take images, or take something like screenshots off the internet. They can use the handwriting tool. They can just type in a text box, whatever they want to do. Again, there's some freedom and creativity and some buy-in because of that. In round 2, everybody from essay choice 1 now moves over to the next essay choice. So everyone that was looking at essay choice 1 is now moving over to essay choice 2. So now there's a new prompt, but there's already a whole bunch of ideas on that prompt. Those scholars are now going to respond to the ideas that are already listed on that second prompt, that second Jamboard. So it's a little slightly more chaotic this way, but it was just a tweak that I was able to make for the digital sphere instead of the sticky notes and colored pens and gallery walk physical sphere of the classroom to arrive at the same idea, which is we want a lot of ideas to help us out to think about this problem or task. All right. Thank you for joining me, and Happy New Year again. For more quick tips for online teaching, please check out www.jennacamp.com or find me on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn at Jenna Camp Educational. Thanks so much and have a great year.